PlayStation released their fiscal year 2022 financial reports, and it was a very successful year for Sony with the PS5 and the PlayStation brand. They broke records in revenue and hardware sales and all of that type of stuff. It was very, very good. But there was one thing that was very confusing when it comes to the numbers that they released, and it is that the actual unit sales of games on PlayStation were down versus the previous fiscal year. And you would expect when there are records in revenue and hardware that more gamers will be buying and playing games on PlayStation. So let's take a look at this article here, as it is suggesting that the new price tag of $70 may be negatively impacting the PS5 game unit sales. And this would be something that would impact across the entire industry, because as we know, there are games now are the $10 more. Xbox raised the price of their games, and there's many third-party publishers out there that have raised the price of their games. $70 is something that we hadn't seen in a very long time. It was pretty much the standard $60, at least in the United States, for a couple of generations. So I feel like we're now hitting a threshold where people are saying enough is enough, and they don't want to continue to pay more for the game when they've been paying a certain amount for as long as they were previous to that $10 range. So this is reports as new $69.99 price may negatively impact PS5 game unit sales, data suggests. And it says here, while PlayStation 5 hardware is on the rise with record-breaking console sales revenue, PlayStation users are actually buying far fewer games than they have before. Data from Sony and Activision offers a possible explanation on why this is happening. Sony just reported its best ever year for PlayStation earnings, raking in nearly $27 billion in revenues, and PS5 console hardware sales were the main driver for this overperformance, with Sony generating a record-breaking $8.297 billion from PS4 and PS5 console sales during fiscal year 2022. Now, there's a lot of information you could take out of this. Again, very successful for the PlayStation 5 and Sony. But one thing that I always look at, and I know this may be somewhat of a stretch, but I think it kind of does ring true. And it is that Sony and PlayStation have the best marketing out there. They are the top of mind for so many people when they think about video games, and generally for someone who doesn't really follow the industry as much. They want to go out, they want to buy a console. The first thing that probably pops into most people's minds because of the success of the brand, especially throughout the PlayStation 4 era, is PlayStation. And some of these numbers will reflect that as they're going out, they're seeing PlayStation, they're picking up the console, and then it's just sitting there. And then there's the other side of the thing where some people just want to play one or two games, and they go out and purchase a PlayStation to play those one or two games, which to me, I think is, again, marketing. Because if you're Xbox on the other side of this entire thing, those are the customers you want to try to draw them in and show them the value that Xbox has with Xbox Game Pass. If you're only out there to play one or two games, you pick up the cheaper console, first of all, in terms of price, which is the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, at least in Canada. When I'm looking at it, the Xbox Series X is $50 cheaper than the PlayStation 5. So you pick up that console if you want to play one or two games, and then you try to get them in to subscribe to Game Pass. And this is where I think the fault of the marketing comes in from Xbox, and it shows how good the marketing is here from PlayStation. Now they continue on here and say software revenues were likewise at an all-time high. Data provided by Sony indicates that PlayStation gamers spent $6.367 billion in combined digital and physical software purchases. Hardware is pulling in record numbers, and so is software, but the overall game unit sales were down quite a bit for fiscal year 2022, dropping to 264.2 million games sold, which represents a substantial 39 million drop in unit sales from a year ago. So people are buying a few games and spending all of their money within those few games and not going out and buying all of the new stuff that is coming out, which is very contrary to a lot of arguments out there that people say PlayStation gamers buy all of the games, or the ones that support every single game, when this here is saying that isn't the case, whereas actual unit sales of these games have dropped year over year. And is this a trend? Is this something that we will continue to see throughout the PlayStation 5 era? Maybe PlayStation Plus also has something to do with this. They've expanded out their subscription service, and we know that their subscription service is getting better. I mean, PS Plus isn't a slouch. It is decent. If you want to subscribe and play a bunch of games for a singular fee every single month, PS Plus isn't a bad option. comparing it to Game Pass, it still really isn't a bad option. I think Game Pass is better, still has more value. It has the day one first party games, but PS Plus isn't a bad option if you are on the PlayStation platform. Now, here are the charts here where they show you the drop in terms of game unit sales. It's been steadily going down since 2020. Huge uptick in 2020. Maybe that's because it included the launch of the PS5, so people bought it and then just went crazy on all the new stuff on the console. Not sure, but steadily going down from 2020 here into 2022. And they say here that an uptick in hardware typically leads to increased game purchases, but we're seeing a reduction in game unit sales accompanying the meteoric rise of console adoption. So people are buying PS5, not buying new games, playing the same games over and over again, or their games, this console is just sitting there and once they're finishing their game, they're waiting a while before they buy a new one. It says the trend indicates that PlayStation gamers are buying fewer titles, but spending more money on the games that they do buy. This is reflective of the higher $70 price tag associated with new PlayStation 5 games. And honestly, the $70 price tag is very hard to justify this day and age. I know games are bigger in scope, they cost more to make, but so many games now are just releasing absolutely broken. And it's ridiculous now when we see arguments still of people blaming it on hardware. I think that ship has absolutely sailed, especially people still out here, they're blaming it on the Xbox Series S potato. Just absurd arguments now with the whole hardware thing, in my opinion. It is clearly having to do with optimization and developers not having enough time or not being able to optimize these games properly across all platforms before they release. And I don't really blame the devs for these games being released buggy, because I'm sure most devs out there have no want in putting these games out until they are 100% ready. It's got to do with the publishers pushing out games to meet deadlines, to meet financial reports, to meet the shareholders' wants, and make sure that their stock isn't falling. All of that type of stuff plays a much bigger role, in my opinion, for these games releasing buggy, because I'm sure if it was up to the developers, although we would be waiting more for these games, they would make sure that they were released without as much bugs and more optimization. But that's the thing. Like, why would you want to pay $70 for games that are broken? Even Jedi Survivor, I'm a big fan of the series. I love the first one. I love Star Wars, but I'm not paying $70 for that game to just be coming out completely broken. I've done it before in the past, and now I'm really going to start making sure that I control falling into the hype train when it comes to games that get released broken. Now, next on here, it says, in a results briefing, Sony management confirmed that third-party game sales had dropped in fiscal year 22, and data also shows a marked 38.6 million year-over-year reduction in third-party titles sold on the PlayStation Store for the period. So overall, there's just less game sales going on at PlayStation. Now, to be fair, the revenues, the sales and everything like that in terms of the dollar amount is still high. I mean, it's still doing very well. They say that it is actually an all-time high quarterly for their actual software revenues, even though the unit sales are down, just meaning more people are spending, like they say, a lot more money within certain games. But at the end of the day, this entire report here comes to the conclusion that the $70 price tag is what is really negatively impacting the overall number of game unit sales. While software revenues are remaining high, people are getting games on sale. People are buying one game and playing that for maybe half a year, maybe even longer, who knows, and just spending all their money on DLC, which makes sense. If you love a game, you might as well put as much into that game rather than risking $70 on something that is going to come out you may not like, or again, launches in a bad state. So I thought that was an interesting report, looking at how the price is affecting game sales as well as just game sales overall on the PS5. And then we have this here, which is, I think, some pretty good news. And it is Wolong Fallen Dynasty has hit 1 million units sold and 3.8 million players on Xbox Game Pass. And again, it shows you Xbox Game Pass is good for the industry, good for these publishers and developers. An argument that people keep having about the service is, does it cannibalize sales? I'm sure it does in some way, but overall, is it better for these games? And I think there's tons more data pointing towards it being yes as the answer. And here's another one. And this is a bigger game. This is a Koei Tecmo game, Team Ninja game. And it was a huge third-party release this year, especially after the success of something like Elden Ring, where a lot of people who weren't generally into Souls games now would be after that and probably were looking forward to this. The game has been successful, you can say, and Xbox Game Pass has definitely helps. And so they say here that They've sold 1 million units worldwide, and this includes a combination of physical and digital copies of the game sold across the Series XS, Xbox One, PS5, PS4, and PC. And on top of that, on Xbox Game Pass, they have over 3.8 million players playing the game, which I know there's 25 plus million subscribers, but that is a significant amount of people jumping in. And if you're Koei Tecmo and you're Team Ninja, you're looking at this and you are extremely happy with that number. I can guarantee that, because they know they're coming out with DLC. They're coming out with more money that can be spent on this game that doesn't come with the Xbox Game Pass version of the game. And I bet you 3.8 million players playing the game is going to have a huge effect on people going out and actually spending more money on the game itself. And they even mentioned here that to celebrate the milestone, Koei Tecmo has announced that on top of receiving a slew of free updates, several DLC packs will become available for Wo Long Fallen Dynasty in the future. And the DLC pack Battle of Zhongwan, I don't know if I said that right, is scheduled to be added in June, with 2 more special DLC packs to follow afterward. And 3.8 million players being able to jump in right away in that game on day one is going to help sell those DLC packs. And that's where it's going to be a massive advantage for Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja by putting their game into Game Pass. And other publishers and developers, I'm sure, are looking at stuff like this, because not only are they getting the deal, Microsoft paying them to get the game on there, they're getting the promotion of Game Pass itself, where people who may have not played it or may have not heard of it have jumped in, and they have a higher chance of getting those people to actually spend more money on that game. And Xbox benefits obviously as well, because people will be spending that money within the Microsoft Store and they will be getting a cut. So I think that's a really good success story. Another great success story for Xbox Game Pass. And there's another one here, and this is Minecraft Legends, which a lot of people were thinking this game didn't do well for some reason, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They have reported over 3 million players have already experienced the game itself. I mean, the game is multi-platform, but it's also on Game Pass, all the type of stuff. And I'm sure all of these things coming together help bring Minecraft Legends to the state that it is. So some success stories here, as well as some interesting stuff here with PlayStation, and just overall, how $70, how is that price hike affecting game sales? I think, of course, it's affecting game sales on the PS5, but I think overall on all platforms, it's going to have an effect if it hasn't yet, but it will going forward. As more games are coming out broken, people are getting fed up with it. There's no more of, I think, people giving these developers and publishers a pass, because it's been just consistently, almost every game now releases in a bad state. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.